Yes, well, I'll finish for Deputy Maureen. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. I think the one thing that all this recent storm damage is doing is reminding us of our own helplessness and vulnerability when it comes to the force of nature. And maybe nature is trying to tell us how much we have been disregarding all the warnings about climate change. And what we're experiencing in this country recently is what has been experienced in the countries of the developing world for many, many years. And again, in so many cases, it is due to the fact that warnings on climate change and people speaking about climate change, they've not been heeded. I suppose also what we're seeing now is as the result of poor planning, the effect of bad planning, and not thinking beyond the immediate time frame and not having enough consideration of the long-term effects of the decisions that were made. You know, you look at the locations of certain towns and villages, and we have to go back, you know, thousands of years. But there were various reasons why they were built in those particular places, whether it was access to water or transport or for security. But what happened then was we saw this sprawling urbanisation and an infrastructure that couldn't cope with the increasing demands on it. You know, we've seen in the past when flooding occurs, there is the immediate outcry and the immediate responses, and then it seems to go off the agenda until the next storm comes. But I think what we're seeing now is unprecedented. As other speakers have said, nobody has seen this in their living memory. So the time is very much for action. Now, Dublin Central has experienced severe flooding in recent times. Fortunately, not this time, and I'm afraid I'm tempting fate here with the weather outside, but we have been fortunate at this particular time. But where I live in East Wall, the last time it was like living in a lake, and to see people going past in canoes and small boats. So we know exactly what the people in the other counties are experiencing at the moment. And you look at the media coverage, and you know, you talk to people, and I know from my own experience of what happens, the destruction in houses, and people will always talk about the smell that lingers. So what has happened and did happen was houses almost practically being rebuilt. And that brings me to the issue of insurance. And I've been in contact with various insurance companies, with the Insurance Ireland, with the Minister of State on this. And in October 2012, I was asking him about his engagement with the Insurance Ireland, because at that stage there was no insurance for homes where extensive flood repair work had been carried out, and also no insurance for homes in areas that were flooded, but whose homes, particular homes, were not flooded. And the answer I got then was, and I quote, "In areas where flood defence and alleviation works have been carried out, I cannot accept that any property protected by significant public capital investment would not be able to receive a quotation for insurance at a reasonable cost." And that was, you know, pretty positive. The Minister also acknowledged he'd had constructive engagement with the insurance industry about the scope and the scale of the works that were being carried out by the OPW or by the local authorities with OPW funding. And a lot of work was gone into that. Now, it further corresponded to Minister Hayes on the insurance cover in October of last year. And it was different then, that the insurance companies make commercial decisions on the provision of insurance cover based on their assessment of the risks. They're using their own flood risk survey and mapping information, and that the Office of Public Works has no role or function in relation to the oversight or regulation of the insurance industry or of insurance matters generally. Now, I took this up again following correspondence sent to me about what the British insurance brokers were doing and suggestions that they had made at a parliamentary committee meeting in England, and I was in touch with the Minister for Finance, and his answer was that the issue of provision of new flood cover or the renewal of existing flood cover is a commercial matter for insurance companies, which is based on a proper assessment of the risks that they are accepting. Last Friday, the city manager in Dublin had a meeting for TDs and senators from the area, and at that meeting a whole series of works were outlined, works that had gone on the rivers in Dublin, on the boardwalk and on the various canals, and yet it doesn't seem to be getting through to the insurance companies that all of this has happened, and they don't seem to be reacting at all. We know what has been set up in Dublin, for example, the Control Incident Report Room and all the various works that have been done. And I do hope that when that is taken into account, that the insurance companies will use that information. They say they're waiting on data. They have data. Minister Noonan also outlined in that answer there that Irish Insurance Ireland discussions on sharing of information on flood alleviation schemes by the OPW, by local authorities, and this has to lead to necessary flood cover for householders in areas where the works have been completed. My last point is that when there is a very heavy shower of rain, people, particularly elderly people, are on because they are terrified of what is going to happen. That should not be the case. I know the money has come in, but I think we're going to need an awful lot more.
Margaret,
Thanks.